The Pastor Who Hated Church. Follow Elvis Jung on his journey of redemption. Chapter 21. Elvis sat in his car, waiting for Gideon Hook to arrive. Nick arranged for a meeting with Gideon, deacon of the Sturton Street Church. Elvis agreed to listen to him, but refused to commit to anything more. He wasn't sure this is what he wanted to do. Church had lost its luster. So had Christians. The two previous churches taught him the dark side of Christianity. He didn't know if there was anything beyond the ugly. He tried to pray, but even that was frustrating. Most of the time he felt like he was talking to the walls. The clock in his car read 2:55. In 5 minutes he was to meet Gideon. Elvis already regretted agreeing to this meeting. He didn't want to meet another person who would tell him how wonderful his church was. He was tired of hearing lies. The clock turned to 2:56. He looked around the parking lot at Morton's Coffee Pub. He looked at the people as they moved in and out of the coffee shop. They certainly weren't the kind of people who would fit in at Evergreen Church or the Table. The neighborhood lacked the sparkle of the suburbs or the nouveau chic of the gentrified urban city. This was the East End, the land of the forgotten ones. Elvis felt his heart flutter. It was time to go inside. He took a deep breath and blurted out a prayer. "God, why would I do this again?" he whispered. As he walked to the door, he noticed a man in a parka and toque sitting on the sidewalk beside the door. It was odd considering it was a sunny summer day. Strange as that was, there was another reason Elvis noticed him. The man was engaged in a loud argument with himself. At one point, he screamed obscenities into the air. Elvis tried not to make eye contact. Just as he arrived, the man looked at Elvis and grabbed his leg. "You! Give me a coffee! I need a coffee! Please! Please, man! I need it! I haven't had one in days, man! Please! You can buy it and bring it to me! They don't let me in there!" At first, Elvis tried to ignore him and pull away, but the man was stronger than he looked. "Please, it could be a medium, a small, anything. Please?" Elvis looked for anyone to help. The crowds moved quickly. They seemed more adept at avoiding the bum than Elvis. Okay, just let me go," said Elvis. "No, you'll leave. You won't do it. Just give me the money." Elvis saw through the scam. "I don't think so." Elvis kicked harder. A couple of times he hit the bum in the ribs. The third kick gained his freedom. Elvis's heart was racing and his hands were shaking. Everything about this felt wrong. It was like he had left the country. Elvis got in line, bought a coffee, and looked for a place to sit. He saw someone smiling at him, but Elvis refused to make eye contact. Elvis moved down the aisle but was stopped by the smiling man. "You must be Elvis," said the man. He stood up and shook his hand. Gideon Hook." Elvis gave a sigh of relief. "I thought you were another crazy guy." Gideon laughed. "I saw Pascal give you a hard time out there. Don't worry about him. Believe it or not, he's harmless." Elvis looked back at the bum who was still sitting on the sidewalk. "Yeah, I'm not so sure." The two sat facing each other across the table. "Nick speaks highly of you. He said you didn't have a real good time at your last church." "It happens. So you decided to have a look at the slums." "Actually, Nick said a lot of great things about you too. It can't be easy to have a church in this area." "There's no better place to have one," said Gideon enthusiastically. "If you say so." "Well, I'm happy to sit down with you. We've been without a pastor for a while now. 2 full years. How have you kept things going?" "We've managed. We have a couple of people who do the preaching. I'm one of them. Everyone just steps up and helps, in any way they can." "If I can ask, what happened to the last pastor?" "Ed Sleestack. He had a heart attack. He started the church 16 years ago. He was amazing. He had such a love for people. No one else wanted to build here, but he did." "Sounds like an amazing guy," said Elvis. A better guy than me, he thought. "Tell me about yourself. Did you grow up in church?" "No, I came to Christ at university. My parents are against anything religious." "Man, what are family reunions like?" "We don't talk much. I haven't seen Mom and Dad in years." "Oh," said Gideon. He played with his coffee cup. "Tell me about Sturton Street Church," said Elvis. "It's not a church for everyone. Actually, to be honest, I'm not really interested in selling you on the church. It's different. There are two ways people react to the church. It's instantaneous. They either get it right away or they never do. Does that make sense?" Elvis shook his head. "I'm not sure. It's a church filled with people with physical and mental challenges. We have people in addiction recovery, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Most of our people live below the poverty line. We're not flashy or fancy or anything. A lot of time it's chaos. You never know what's going to happen. It's the kind of place that makes me laugh and cry, sometimes both at the same time," said Gideon. He stopped to take a sip of coffee. Elvis didn't know what to say. "We're also a poor church, but you probably figured that out already. God provides. A lot of times it's miraculous. It's amazing to see, you know?" "Yeah, it's amazing. Tell me about your ministry. The vision you have and all that," said Gideon. Elvis bought some time by taking a long sip of his coffee. "My vision? It's tough to say. It's kind of taken a beating the last few years. When I was in seminary, I kind of hoped to see a church that was alive and exciting. You know, like people who really want to grow. Discipleship. We're commanded to make disciples. Lately, a friend of mine reminded me about looking after widows and orphans. You know the passage in James? I see that as people who are marginalized. A church that doesn't take care of these folks is a church that's lost its soul," said Elvis. He was impressed with his improvisation. "Who would you think are the marginalized, Elvis?" "Well, by the sounds of it, Sturton Street Church." "That's true. But how do you think we should take care of them?" "You know what? I don't know. Like I said, it was what I thought in seminary. I guess it's easier when you're in seminary. Real life is a lot harder," sighed Elvis. "Tell me about it. What brought you to this church? I mean, don't get me wrong, but you're pretty young, and you've got a career. Most people I know like that want to live somewhere else," said Elvis. "Yeah, Nick bugs me about that. I was an MK, a missionary kid. My parents served in El Salvador. I guess for me, this place is normal. I'm not comfortable in the burbs. The first time I went to Sturton, Nancy, a lady with Down syndrome, ran up to me and gave me a hug. I didn't know anyone there, and that was the first thing that happened to me. It was amazing." As Gideon spoke, a tear formed in his eye. Elvis felt uncomfortable by the display. From his perspective, church wasn't a crying matter. "Sorry. Truth is, it's hard to describe Sturton. The best thing to do is see it for yourself. Can you come this Sunday?" Yeah, I think so," said Elvis. "Great. I look forward to seeing what you think about our little church," said Gideon. He looked at his watch. "I'm sorry, but I've got to run. I've got a meeting. It was great to meet you. I'll see you Sunday. Service begins at 11. Elvis shook his hand and watched him leave. He followed a minute behind Gideon. Once outside, he felt the immediate need to pray. "What should I pray?" he thought. "Lord, we'll see what happens," Elvis said out loud. "That's what I always say," said Pascal as he passed by. The following Sunday, Elvis and Sparrow stood in front of Sturton Street Church. It was a storefront wedged between an antique store on one side and a sports bar on the other. Sparrow reached out and held his hand. "Are you ready?" Elvis breathed deeply. "Yep. Let's do this." They stepped inside. The church building itself was shocking. The smell was the first thing that greeted them. It was a blend of mold, sweat, and other bodily fluids. The building itself was nothing more than a large room with chairs and a music stand at the front. A cross made out of driftwood was the only thing that adorned the sanctuary. "They have no piano. Should I go get my guitar?" whispered Sparrow. "Not yet. Wait to see what happens," said Elvis. A toothless, scruffily dressed man approached them and stuck out his hand. "Welcome to Sturton. Are you visiting with us today?" "Yes," said Sparrow with a smile. The two stayed frozen near the front door. It was security in case they needed to make a quick getaway. Elvis saw a large number of people in wheelchairs. He'd never seen so many of them in one place. He didn't really notice the people in them. From across the room, an older man saw them and approached. "Hey there," he said with a smile. Welcome. Come on in. I'm Samson Geet. Samson looked carefully at Elvis. Are you the guy who wants to be our new pastor? The question startled Elvis. He preferred anonymity. That apparently was a luxury he didn't have. Maybe, said Elvis. You're not sure? I just want to make sure it's the Lord's will, said Elvis. Good answer, said Samson. If it's not God's will, then everyone gets hurt. I like that. Can I show you around? Sure, said Sparrow. I'm sorry, I'm Samson, he said, turning his attention to Sparrow. I'm Sparrow Ganaway. I'm supposing the two of you are, said Samson. We're together, said Sparrow. On the way to something more? He asked with a wink. I'd say so, said Sparrow. Elvis couldn't contain his surprise. Samson laughed. Don't worry, men are always the last to know. He led Elvis and Sparrow around the sanctuary, introducing them to anyone and everyone. It was a blur of people. Samson arrived at one wheelchair. I want you to meet someone. Sherry, this is Elvis and Sparrow. Sherry flailed her arms and moaned. Sherry can't talk because of her cerebral palsy, but she has a bliss board, and most people who know her well can understand her. Really? Wow. It's nice to meet you, Sherry. I'm Sparrow. Elvis reached for her hand and shook it. Sherry's been here longer than any of us. She's the old lady of the church, said Samson as he laughed. Sherry flailed so hard, her chair shook. Sherry's got an amazing testimony. Can I tell them? Sherry nodded her head. Great. Sherry lives at Opportunity Home. She was abandoned there by her parents when she was, 3? Anyway, she grew up there. And she was a miserable person. She was so mean, she used to beat up the support staff of OH. They'd even get bruises and cuts. Sherry started coming to Sturton with Macy. She's another Sturton original. I'll introduce you to her later. Sherry became fast friends with Melinda Sleestack, the pastor's wife. One week, Sherry asked Melinda about accepting Jesus. It took forever, but Melinda, she was amazing. She asked Sherry if she wanted to accept Jesus, and Sherry did. Well, a couple of months later, Ed and Melinda went to visit Sherry and Macy at OH. As soon as they arrived, one of the staff stormed up to Melinda, looked her square in the eye, and said, "What have you done to Sherry?" Melinda didn't know what was going on. She said, "I'm sorry?" The staff member said, "You've done something to Sherry, and we want to know what it is." Melinda was worried. She didn't know what to do. She asked, "What do you mean?" The staff person's face brightened. She said, "Up till a couple of months ago, we had never seen her smile. Now she smiles all the time. We used to hate working with her. Now she's wonderful. We love Sherry." It was at that moment Melinda realized that it was right at the time that Sherry had accepted Christ. She was different. God changed her. Absolutely amazing, right? That's like our whole church. Everybody's got a story. He looked at Sherry, who moaned and nodded in agreement. She also smiled. Drool dripped off her chin and onto a bib. "What's your story?" asked Elvis. "I'm an alcoholic. A drunk for, nearly 30 years. I've been recovering the last 13. My wife's a recovering alcoholic too. That's Nicole over there," said Samson. He pointed to a woman who was helping someone sit down. Gideon snuck up and grabbed Elvis by the arm. "Great to see you this morning. How do you like it so far?" "It's overwhelming," said Sparrow. "You must be Sparrow. It's nice to meet you. I'm Gideon." "Great to finally meet you. Nick says amazing things about you." "He says you're an amazing musician." "Thanks." "It's like a mutual admiration society," said Elvis. "Actually, I was hoping you'd come too. We usually don't have any music. We sing a cappella. You didn't happen to bring your guitar, did you?" asked Gideon. "Yeah, it's in the trunk of the car. Elvis, would you please go get it?" Elvis left the church and scanned the street. Other than a woman a block away, the street looked abandoned. He pulled out the guitar, slammed down the trunk, and found himself face to face with the woman he noticed earlier. "Can I have a ride?" she asked. "Oh, I'm already here." "You want a party?" "Party? No, I'm here for church," said Elvis. He pointed over to the building. "Then can I have $1 for a coffee?" Elvis reached into his pocket and grabbed some loose change. Samson called to him from the front door of the church. "He doesn't have any money." Elvis, come here. The woman rolled her eyes and turned away. Elvis stood there confused. Samson met him at the car. She's working the street. A lot of 'em come and go around here. You'll get used to it, said Samson. Elvis brought Sparrow the guitar just in time for the service to start. Gideon led the singing as Sparrow played. The service was informal. Elvis sat and watched as the people settled. Gideon sang his first song as people finished their conversations and found their seats. We'll have favorites. If you have a favorite hymn, shout it out. But here's the thing. This week, if you call out a favorite, you have to also say something you're thankful for. So, which one? Said Gideon. The old rugged cross, said a voice. It was someone in a wheelchair. Marv, great. What are you thankful for? I'm thankful for my power chair that has been fixed. I can get around again, said Marv. That's great. Let's sing the old rugged cross. Sparrow started playing and everyone started singing. Elvis watched as Nicole wiped away her tears. He couldn't help but wonder what was wrong. The rest of the worship was a blur. All Elvis thought about was Sherry, Marv, and Nicole's tears. This was different from Evergreen and the table. It was simple. Everyone looked so rough. He was sure some hadn't bathed in weeks. Elvis watched the people as Gideon preached. He started by counting the attendance. There were 43. Most were listening attentively. Looking at the wheelchairs, he had to remind himself there were people in each one. He constantly looked back to Sherry and Marv. He glanced at Sparrow. She looked back at him and smiled. He really wanted the service to end. He wanted to talk about the morning. He wanted to know what Sparrow thought. He just wanted to leave. This church made him uncomfortable. He could tell himself that it was the immense need, the disabilities, and the addiction recovery. He had no experience with people with special needs. He didn't know how to relate to them. If he needed an excuse for why he couldn't pastor this church, that one was as good as any. But that wasn't the whole truth. The truth was that he was afraid. This church scared him. They looked joyful. People looked happy in his other churches, but he knew it was part of the production. They were happy churches with happy church members. This church wasn't happy. They seemed to have genuine joy. It must be joy, because from any healthy person's perspective, they had no reason to be happy. Elvis thought about Sherry and her testimony. He wondered if it was really true. How could God change someone so much so quickly? Why didn't he feel the same way? He told himself that Sherry was joyful because she hadn't gone through what he had. That was stupid. She had cerebral palsy and was abandoned by her family. Compared to her, he had no excuse. Compared to most of these people, Elvis was successful. How could he pastor these people? Suddenly, a thought entered his mind. It was like a voice had spoken, even though he had heard nothing. The thought formed until it echoed through his head. They need someone who is willing. It was a revelation. He was called to this church. He knew it. Doubts lingered in his mind. He was unprepared. They needed someone with more passion, someone who hadn't been kicked through Christendom and left feeling battered and bruised. His doubts didn't matter. He was called to this church. That ignited both an excitement and terror which he hadn't felt in years. He reached down and held Sparrow's hand. She leaned on him, resting her head on his shoulder. "What do you think?" Elvis whispered in her ear. "This place is amazing," she answered. "I want to come here. You should pastor this church. What do you think?" "We'll talk later." Before he knew it, the service was over and people were buzzing around. Gideon and Samson pulled Elvis and Sparrow into a room off the sanctuary. Nicole was there along with Gideon's wife, Ruth. "So, what'd you think?" said Gideon. "I think I love it when Sparrow plays guitar. Even if Elvis doesn't come here, we want her," said Samson. "Thanks," said Sparrow. She blushed and smiled. "Yeah, but what do you think, Elvis?" asked Nicole. "It's a neat little church," said Elvis, not wanting to give anything away. "What does that mean? Do you want to preach here next week?" asked Gideon. Yeah, actually I would. I think it's a lot to take in. How does this work?" Am I preaching on call? What's the procedure? The four from Sturton looked at one another. We don't really have a procedure. We've never had someone preach on call before, said Gideon. Really? Why? Asked Elvis. Most people barely get through the service. We hardly give what you'd call a good first impression. If I'm not mistaken, Samson said you were propositioned by a hooker before church, added Ruth. Elvis chuckled. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm surprised that didn't send you running and screaming, said Samson. I couldn't leave. Sparrow needed the guitar. The others laughed. Well then, here's what we'll do. You come next week and preach. Sparrow, would you be willing to bring your guitar again? Asked Gideon. I'd love to. Great, said Gideon. You preach, then after the service we'll have a business meeting. People can ask questions. If it goes well, then we vote. If too many questions are raised, then we'll hold off the vote for a week. How does that sound? Elvis looked at Sparrow, then at the others. I do have one question. This is moving really fast, and we haven't talked at all about the business end of it. Salary and the like. The room got eerily quiet. Elvis thought it would be better to ask now than be surprised later. Well, we are going to offer you a salary, announced Samson. But it's not a lot. Probably not what you've been used to, said Nicole. There was another uncomfortable pause. We might as well say it, said Gideon to the other three from the church, who nodded in agreement. 30,000 a year. Elvis stared blankly at them. You're right. That's not what I'm used to. But it's not the end of the world, I think. I'm so relieved, said Samson, as he grabbed his chest. I'd hate to finally get someone here, then lose them on dollars and cents. If the church grows, we could possibly see that increase, said Gideon. I don't want to treat this like a business, fill the seats and raise my salary. It's got to be God's plan, said Elvis. See, I told you I liked this guy, said Samson. Thank you for listening to The Pastor Who Hated Church, written by Timothy G.A. Cooper, narrated by Greg Cooper. Tune in next week to hear the next chapter in Elvis Jung's Tale of Redemption.